Looking back, I probably should have known better, but in the moment it felt harmless. Or maybe I just wanted it to feel that way. My name is Haley, I'm 32, and this is the story of the night that changed everything in my marriage. It's been stuck in my head ever since, like a scene from a movie I can't turn off. It all started with a simple invite. My friend Mia texted me around noon that Friday. Girls' night at Ember Lounge tonight. You in? Ember Lounge was one of those places with dim lighting, loud music, and a touch of exclusivity that made you feel like you were living a little dangerously. I hadn't gone out in months. Marriage, work, and the daily grind had pretty much wiped out my social life. Without a second thought, I said yes. I already knew what I was going to wear too, that black dress. Not just any black dress, the black dress. It was tight in all the right places, short but still classy, with thin straps that made it look effortlessly elegant. It was the kind of dress that made me feel like I still had it. You know, that feeling when you look in the mirror and actually like what you see for once? Now here's the catch. My husband, Ethan, he's 36, has always had this thing about what I wear. He's not controlling exactly, but he's one of those guys who can't help but make little comments. You sure that's not a bit much? Or, you don't want to send the wrong message, do you? I'd always brushed it off. It's just a dress, I'd tell him. That night, I got ready while Ethan sat on the couch, scrolling on his phone like usual. I didn't make a big show about what I was wearing, but I could feel his eyes on me when I grabbed my purse. He didn't say anything. Just a glance and then back to his phone. I figured that was his way of giving me silent approval, not that I needed it. Mia picked me up and the night started off perfectly. We danced, we laughed, and we had those deep, tipsy girl talks in the corners of the lounge where the music wasn't as loud. For the first time in a long time, I felt like me again. Not Ethan's wife, not the woman drowning in routine, just Haley. Free. Alive. But I'll be honest, I noticed the stares. The kind that lingered a little too long. I'm not naive. I knew what the dress was doing, and yeah, I leaned into it a little. A few guys tried to strike up conversations, offering drinks or compliments, but I kept it light. A polite smile here, a quick thanks, but no thanks there. I wasn't looking for attention, but I wasn't running from it either. Around midnight, I texted Ethan. Hope you're okay. Be home soon. No response. I figured he was asleep, so I didn't think much of it. By the time I got home, it was nearly 2 a.m. The house was dark, except for the faint glow of the kitchen light. I walked in, kicked off my heels, and froze. Ethan's wedding ring was on the counter. My chest tightened. It was such a small thing, but it hit like a punch. I called out for him, but the house was silent. I checked the bedroom, the bathroom, the garage. He wasn't there. I grabbed my phone and texted him again. Ethan, where are you? What's going on? No reply. I sent another. This isn't funny, Ethan. Still nothing. My hands were shaking. My mind raced through the worst possibilities. Did something happen to him? But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. Ethan didn't do impulsive. If he did something, he meant it. 4 a.m. I gave up. I stripped off the dress, threw on one of his old shirts, and crawled into bed. He just wants me to feel what he felt, I thought. He's teaching me a lesson. I hated that idea, teaching me a lesson. Felt patronizing, childish. But I convinced myself he'd be back by morning. He wasn't. By 10 a.m., I'd gone from anxious to angry. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I left a message. Ethan, this is ridiculous. Call me back. By noon, I was pacing the house, staring at his ring on the counter. Was he waiting for me to apologize? For wearing a dress? For looking good? I was spiraling. That's when the front door opened. I jumped, my heart pounding as I turned toward him. Ethan walked in, calm as ever, keys in one hand, phone in the other. He didn't look at me. Where have you been? I demanded, crossing my arms. He set his keys on the counter, moving slowly, deliberately, like he wanted me to feel every second of it. Out, he said, walking past me. Ow. My voice cracked. You leave your ring, disappear all night, and just stay out? He paused in the hallway, glancing over his shoulder. You looked like you had fun last night, he said, his tone cool but sharp. And just like that, everything shifted. You looked like you had fun last night, he said again, his tone so measured it made my skin crawl. I followed him into the bedroom, arms still crossed, my heart racing. What's that supposed to mean? Ethan turned, leaning against the doorframe with his hands in his pockets. His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. It means I didn't do anything last night that you didn't already do. That hit me like a slap. I blinked at him, trying to make sense of his words. What are you even talking about, Ethan? You're seriously comparing me going out with my friends to whatever this is? He tilted his head slightly, his expression cold and unreadable. I'm talking about respect, Haley. About knowing where the line is. You knew what that dress would do, but you wore it anyway. My jaw dropped. Seriously? You're mad because I looked good? For me? That's what this is about. He didn't flinch. Looked good for you, he repeated, his voice lower now, almost dangerous. You don't wear a dress like that for yourself, Haley. You wear it for them. Them. I shot back, my voice rising. Who the hell is them, Ethan? He pointed vaguely, his hand sweeping towards some invisible crowd. You know exactly who. Every guy in that room who couldn't take his eyes off you. My face burned, not from embarrassment but from pure rage. You're delusional, I said, stepping closer. I wore that dress because I liked how I felt in it. Not because I needed some drunk guy at the bar to tell me I'm cute. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. You didn't have to say anything. You didn't have to do anything. It's not about cheating, Haley. It's about the way you let them think they had a shot. I threw my hands up. I didn't do anything, Ethan. I went out, I danced, I came home. That's it. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. You didn't have to do anything. That's the point. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, but I refused to let him see me crack. You want to talk about respect? I said finally, my voice trembling. What about leaving your wedding ring on the counter like it's some kind of message? You wanted to hurt me, Ethan. You wanted me to feel this. So congratulations, you win. His eyes softened just for a moment before the wall came back up. It's not about winning, Haley. It's about making sure I never feel like that again. He turned and started pulling clothes from the closet, tossing them into a duffel bag without a word. My chest tightened. What are you doing? He didn't stop packing. Giving you some space. Maybe it'll help you figure out what you really want. Oh, come on, Ethan. I grabbed his arm, but he pulled away like I'd burned him. This is stupid. He zipped the bag shut, slung it over his shoulder, and walked past me without a second glance. I followed him to the front door, my voice cracking as I called after him. So you're just leaving? That's your solution. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. It's not about leaving, Haley. It's about making sure we don't keep crossing lines that we can't come back from. And with that, he opened the door and walked out. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door long after it closed behind him. My mind raced, replaying every word, every look, every moment. I sat down on the couch, my eyes landing on his wedding ring still sitting on the counter. It felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of everything I'd just lost. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there thinking, was I wrong? Was he? My phone buzzed next to me and I grabbed it instinctively. It was Mia. Hey, are you okay? Last night was crazy. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. 'Cause honestly, I didn't know if I was okay. The hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. The house felt too quiet, too still. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the fridge, every tick of the clock seemed amplified in the silence. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting Ethan to walk back in like nothing had happened. But he didn't. By midnight, I was sitting on the couch with my legs pulled up to my chest, staring at his wedding ring still sitting on the counter. That tiny piece of metal felt like it carried the weight of the world. I couldn't shake the image of him walking out, his voice calm, his words deliberate. "It's about making sure I never feel like that again." Those words haunted me. What had I made him feel? Betrayal? Embarrassment? Less than enough? I hated the thought, hated that my actions, however unintentional, could have hurt him that deeply. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through our text thread. It was bare. The last text he sent me was a simple, "Be safe," before I went out that night. Felt like a lifetime ago. I typed out a message, deleted it, typed another, and deleted that too. Nothing felt right. Finally, I wrote, "Can we talk?" I hit send before I could overthink it again. The message delivered, but no typing bubble appeared. I stared at the screen, waiting for something, anything, but nothing came. I tossed my phone onto the coffee table, burying my face in my hands. The weight of the night finally hit me, pressing down on my chest like a physical force. This wasn't just a fight. It felt like a turning point, like the ground beneath us had shifted and I wasn't sure if we could find our footing again. The next morning, the sun streamed through the windows, mocking the heaviness in my chest. I'd barely slept, tossing and turning as my mind replayed every word, every glance, every silence. My phone buzzed. I scrambled to grab it, hoping it was Ethan, but it was Mia again. "Brooke, are you okay? You've been quiet. Call me if you need to talk." I ignored it. I wasn't ready to explain, wasn't ready for the inevitable mix of concern and judgment I'd hear in her voice. By noon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the only place I could think of, Ethan's brother, Ryan. Ryan lived about 20 minutes away, and the entire drive I rehearsed what I'd say. Ryan and Ethan were close, practically best friends. If anyone knew where he was, it would be Ryan. When I pulled up to his house, my hands were shaking. I rang the doorbell, and after a moment, Ryan answered, his face immediately shifting from surprise to concern. "Brooke? What's going on?" I hesitated, my voice cracking as I said, "Is Ethan here?" Ryan frowned, stepping aside to let me in. "No, he's not." "Why? What happened?" I walked into the living room, my arms wrapped around myself like a shield. "We had a fight. A big one. He left last night, and I don't know where he is." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He didn't say anything to me." "Did you try calling him?" "Of course I did," I snapped, immediately regretting the sharpness in my tone. "Sorry. I don't know what to do." Ryan sat down on the couch, motioning for me to do the same. "What was the fight about?" I hesitated, not sure how much to share. Finally, I said it was about respect. Boundaries. He thought I crossed a line, and maybe I did. "I don't know." Ryan looked at me for a long moment before saying, "Ethan's always been the kind of guy who keeps things bottled up. But when he does let it out, it's usually because it's been building for a while." "Are you sure this is just about last night?" Question hit me like a punch. Was it just about last night? Or had I missed all the signs, all the moments that led us here? I left Ryan's house feeling no closer to an answer. Ethan wasn't there, and Ryan didn't know where he might be. I drove aimlessly for a while, my thoughts swirling like a storm. Every possible outcome played out in my mind, each one worse than the last. When I got back home, the house felt even emptier than before. I walked into the kitchen, my eyes landing on the wedding ring still sitting on the counter. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand, the cool metal sending a shiver down my spine. I placed it back on the counter, the weight of everything pressing down on me once again. And then, as if the universe had finally decided to give me a break, my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, my heart racing when I saw Ethan's name. "We can talk." I'll come by later. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I sat back on the couch, clutching my phone like a lifeline, waiting for whatever came next. Later that evening, I heard the sound of Ethan's car pulling into the driveway. My heart raced as I sat on the couch, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't know what to expect. Would he be calm? Angry? Would he even look at me the same way? The front door opened and Ethan stepped inside. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much either. He was still in the same clothes he'd left in, and his hair was a little messy, like he'd been running his hands through it all day. We locked eyes, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The silence was thick, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Ethan finally broke it. "Brooke." His voice was steady, but there was a softness to it that caught me off guard. It wasn't anger, it was something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Ethan," I said quietly, standing up but not moving closer. "Thank you for coming." He nodded, shutting the door behind him and walking to the kitchen. I followed, keeping a careful distance. He grabbed a glass of water, taking a slow sip before setting it on the counter. For a moment, it felt like we were both stalling, like neither of us wanted to be the first to dive into the conversation we knew was coming. Finally, Ethan turned to face me, leaning back against the counter with his arms crossed. "You wanted to talk." "So talk." I swallowed hard, suddenly unsure where to start. "I'm sorry," I began, my voice trembling. "I never wanted to make you feel disrespected." "I didn't think," I stopped myself, shaking my head. "No, that's not right. I should have thought. I should have considered how you might feel." Ethan didn't say anything, but his eyes softened slightly. I took that as a sign to keep going. "I wore that dress because I felt good in it," I said, my voice steadying a little. "I wasn't trying to get attention. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just wanted to feel like myself again." He let out a slow breath, his shoulders relaxing just a bit. "I get that, Brooke. I do. But it wasn't just the dress. It was everything. The looks, the smiles, the way you let it all happen like it didn't matter." His voice cracked slightly and he looked away. "But it mattered to me." My chest tightened. "I wasn't trying to invite anything, Ethan. I wasn't. I wasn't trying to hurt you." "But you did," he said quietly, his gaze meeting mine again. "Even if you didn't mean to, you did." I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "I know. And I hate that. I hate that I made you feel that way. But walking out like you did, leaving your ring on the counter, that hurt too." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression conflicted. "I know. I wasn't trying to hurt you either. I needed you to understand how it felt. To feel like you're not enough. Like someone else could take your place." The words hit me like a punch. "Ethan, no one could ever take your place. I don't want anyone else. I need you to know that." He looked at me for a long moment, like he was trying to decide if he believed me. "It's hard to feel that way when I see you smiling at someone else like that." I stepped closer, my voice soft but firm. "I smiled because I didn't want to be rude, Ethan. Not because I wanted him. I didn't. I never have." Ethan let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through his hair. "It's not about what you wanted, Brooke. It's about what it looked like." I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I can't control what it looks like to other people. All I can do is tell you the truth. And the truth is, I love you. Only you." He sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "I know, Brooke. I know you love me. But this isn't just about love. It's about trust. And right now, that's what I'm struggling with." Tears finally spilled over, and I wiped them away quickly. "I don't know how to fix that, Ethan. But I'll do whatever it takes." He looked at me again, his expression softening as he stepped closer. "I don't know if it's something you can just fix overnight," he said quietly. "But I need to believe that we can work on it. Together." I nodded, my voice trembling. "We can. I promise we can." Ethan reached out, brushing a tear from my cheek. His touch was gentle, familiar, and it broke something in me. I leaned into him, wrapping my arms around his waist. He held me tightly, like he was afraid to let go. For the first time in what felt like forever, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It wasn't full of unspoken words or lingering doubts. It was just peace. "I'm sorry," I whispered against his chest. "Me too," he replied, his voice soft but steady. "Let's figure this out." And for the first time since he walked out that door, I believed we could. Over the next few days, Ethan and I tiptoed around each other like strangers learning how to coexist. Tension hadn't vanished, but at least the walls between us had started to crack. Conversations were hesitant, filled with careful words, but they were happening. It was a start. On Thursday evening after dinner, Ethan surprised me. "Let's go for a walk," he said, grabbing his jacket. It was so out of character for him. Ethan wasn't the spontaneous type, but I nodded, grabbed my coat, and followed him outside. Cool night air was refreshing, and the quiet hum of our neighborhood felt soothing. We walked side by side for a while, the silence between us comfortable but tentative. Finally, Ethan broke it. "I've been thinking about everything," he said, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "About us." I swallowed hard, bracing myself. "Okay." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "I don't want this to be something we just brush under the rug. It's not fair to either of us. I need us to be better than this." I nodded, my chest tightening. "I want that too, Ethan. I really do." He looked down, kicking at the pavement. "I know I overreacted. Leaving like that, it wasn't right. I thought it would make me feel better, but it didn't. It just made me feel worse." I reached for his hand, my voice soft. "I don't think I've ever been as scared as I was that night. I thought I'd lost you." His fingers tightened around mine. "You didn't. But I felt like I was losing you. That's what scared me." I blinked back tears, shaking my head. "Ethan, you'll never lose me. I've made mistakes, but my heart has always been with you. I don't know how to prove that to you, but I need you to believe me." He sighed, his expression softening as he met my gaze. "I want to believe you. I do. But Brooke, we have to start being honest with each other. About everything. No more guessing what the other person is thinking. No more trying to win arguments or prove points." I nodded, my voice trembling. "I'm ready for that. I'm ready to do the work." His lips curved into a small, tentative smile. "Then let's do it. Let's figure out how to make this work again." We stood there for a moment, the night wrapping around us like a cocoon. I leaned into him, resting my head against his chest, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on the same page. Following weekend, we had our first real conversation about everything. We sat at the kitchen table, a pot of coffee between us, and talked for hours. Ethan shared how he'd felt watching me at the club, the insecurities he didn't even realize he had until that night. I told him about how I'd been feeling stuck in my own skin, craving something, anything, that made me feel alive again. "I don't want to feel like I'm competing with the world for your attention," Ethan admitted, stirring his coffee absently. "I just want to know that I'm enough." My heart broke hearing him say that. "You are, Ethan. You've always been. I got lost somewhere along the way. And I'm sorry for making you doubt that. We didn't fix everything that day, how could we, but it felt like we'd taken the first step towards something better. Toward us." Weeks turned into months, and slowly things started to change. We made a promise to prioritize each other, to carve out time for date nights and real conversations. We started being more intentional, less reactive. It wasn't always easy, but we were both committed. One evening, Ethan came home with something behind his back. "What's that?" I asked, eyeing him suspiciously. He grinned, pulling out a small box. "Open it." Inside was a new wedding ring, simple but elegant, with a tiny engraving on the inside. "We chose us." Tears welled up in my eyes as I slipped it onto my finger. "It's perfect," I whispered. Ethan smiled, taking my hand in his. "So are we. Imperfectly perfect." For the first time in a long time, I believed him. And this time, I wasn't going to let anything or anyone come between us again.